Happy day, everybody, and welcome back. This is part 2 of the grading policy module. Again, my name is Tina Adakate, and we are going to be going over the how to come up with your final or composite grades for your students for at the end of the grading period, which is semester 1 and semester 2, or as we know it, quarter 2 and quarter 4. Okay. Oops. So there are 2 methods that we have that you can use to come up with your composite or final grade. Method 1, your composite or final grade will be an average of all the priorities, standards, skills, or topics that were taught within that semester. And method 2 is your composite or final grade will be based on overall teacher judgment. Last year, we gave you both the same options to go ahead and do both of them. What will be interesting this school year is that what actually is better this school year is with method 1, Power Teacher Pro will average those grades for you as you plug them in we'll go over all of that in the Power Teacher Pro training, but as you plug in your grades, it will be able to average those grades for you. With method 2, you are going to have to utilize a override situation, which may not always be the case. You may not want to do that for all your students. It may just end up being for a handful of students that you want to go ahead and do that. But again, both of these 2 methods are completely and absolutely acceptable. You can strictly use one method or the other. It's really up to you. Okay. With method 1, in order to come up with this composite grade, you first, step 1 is you have a body of evidence that you evaluate to determine the overall proficiency level for each of the PSSTs. Again, when we do the Power Teacher Pro training, we will show you how to pull down your PSST to enter the grade for that particular skill. Step 2 in this method is to determine the final and composite grade. The overall proficiency levels for all of the PSSTs are going to be averaged to the nearest 10th decimal place. This is something that will be like mathematically put in, so you're not going to have to worry about that. It'll be configured into Power Teacher Pro. With method 2, when you're using the overall judgment, again, step 1, you have the body of evidence that is evaluated to determine the overall proficiency again for each of the PSSTs. And then in step 2, your final composite grade will be based on your overall teacher judgment after you have reviewed all of the PSSTs during that grading period. Again, you're looking at, because that's kind of one of the difficult things, you kind of have to have that average grade, right? You're going to be taking a look at all of the skills that you've taught through that grading period, which is that entire semester. And based on all of that, you may use your teacher judgment to say, gosh, I think that the student is more of a 3 or a 3.5 as opposed to the average that it's coming out to, which may be a 2.5. It just kind of depends on you and that teacher judgment. Again, you will have to override in Power Teacher Pro for this, but that is a given. When you are changing a grade, you will always have to override that. Again, we've got that experience with that, and we'll go over that again in the Power Teacher Pro training. Okay, so those are the 2 methods that are acceptable for having your composite or your final grade for the students. Now, once you actually have so just to give you an idea of what method 1 and method 2 might look like for the teacher. So in method 1, if I have a student and we covered 2 standards, if you notice I have 4 artifacts for standard 1, and if you notice artifact 2, we use an NE here because, again, the student didn't submit this particular artifact, but there's no grade there because, again, I don't have that. So there won't be any weight to that. And then for standard 2, you have your artifacts are all graded here. Your standard summative, which is something that will be generated by Power Teacher Pro, would have for standard 1, if it averages this, it comes up to a 3.0, and then standard 2 would be a 3.5. Your final composite grade would be the average of the 3.0 and the 3.5 to come up with a 3.25 grade for the student. Again, this is when it's just the averages, right? We're rounding, we're taking that. Again, we can use a 3.25 in your final composite grade. When we're entering grades, we're not doing a 3.25. It's either a 3.0 or a 3.5, right? It's just the final grade that has those little variants there. With method 2, when I want to go ahead and use my teacher judgment, again, same grades. If you notice, my standard summative was here, but for the final grade, I'm going to go ahead and using my teacher judgment between a 3.0 and a 3.5. Again, if I were to average that, right, it comes up to a 3.25. Well, because I want to show, because I'm using my teacher judgment, I might just say, okay, my final grade is going to go ahead and be a 3.5, which makes, sometimes it seems like it might just be peanuts, but that might make a bit of a difference, especially to the student if we're just talking to them in 3.0 and 3.5. And I might I would likely justify myself with that 3.5 because the problem solving skill itself is something that's more higher order thinking. So I want to go ahead and show that the student has more of an understanding of their mathematical skills when they do the problem solving. Again, that's the real life application, right? And they're more towards that 4.0, which is where we want them to be. So again, these are just the two different methods. This is what it would look like with the two methods, and hopefully that kind of explains it a little bit more. There's a lot more to this that I'm sure we'll answer in time when we're all out of the school sites. Your grade composites, again, this is for quarter 2 or semester 1 and quarter 4 semester 2. The grades, when they are printed out, will be converted to a letter grade. And I know that you're kind of thinking, oh gosh, we're going from these levels and now we're going to get these letter grades. Some of this, again, this was done because the parents, as one of the stakeholders, were really, they may not be ready for this. But again, it's something that they're used to for those letter grades. So when Power Teacher Pro converts for you, again, it's going to do this automatically. You don't need to know, but just so you know what that means, you're looking at these particular scales where a 3.6 to a 4.0 constitutes an A+, the 3.0 to 3.5 is an A, 2.8 to 2.9 is a B+, 2.5 to 2.7 is a B, and so on. Okay, now keeping in mind when you are entering your grades into Power Teacher Pro, you're not going to be giving a student a 3.6. The only grades that you will be entering into your Power Teacher Pro would be the 1.5 to 2.5, again in your 0.5 increments. The reason that we have a scale, the conversion this way is because when it does average mathematically, when you have to divide by the number of artifacts, you will likely end up with some kind of a number where it might be anywhere falling from a 3.0 to a 3.5, like a 3.3. That's an A. Okay, so you kind of, when you're talking to the parents, you want to kind of, while they are going to see these letter grades, you still want to talk to them in terms of the levels so that they understand where their child is actually falling on that proficiency scale. So again, they'll see these letters, but when you are conferencing with them, I'm going to highly suggest that you always refer back to the proficiency scale or to the levels so that the parents have a good understanding as to what their grades actually mean. Okay. Now, again, the grades should automatically be done in Power Teacher Pro, and teachers will not have to make any conversions for the composite grades. All right, it'll be something that is printed out. And yes, we're working with FSAS to make sure that all of these things are done so that you won't have to worry about those things at all. Okay. Now, for elementary, again, your K-5 subjects, to allow students and teachers to focus on the core subject areas, report card grades will only be required for ELA, math, science, social studies, and Shmoro. Okay, all other subjects are should be taught and incorporated into your regular instruction, and all of the subjects you're talking about, the music, PE, art, Again, but those grades will not be required to be placed into your into the report card this school year. And this is only for school year 21-22. So for school year 22-23 and moving on, you will have to revert back to placing a grade in for computer science, for art, for health, for PE, music, and I think I might have missed something else, but you get the point. Again, this is only for elementary. This is part of the grading policy. Again, this section only for school year 21-22. Okay, so hopefully I gave you just enough information in terms of converting your grades. The final composite grade. Again, final composite grades are for semester 1 or semester 2, or otherwise known as quarter 2, quarter 4. Okay, I'll see you in the next section.